Lin Feng opened his eyes. He looked around, but did not find anyone beside him. Lin Feng, you are finally awake. I thought you would never wake up again. The one who spoke was Longbetham. Its voice appeared directly in Lin Feng's mind. How long was I asleep? It has been 3 days. So, we've been in this ruin for more than 3 days? Longbetham did not answer, but Lin Feng knew very well that after 3 days, even Sage Kong and Sage Yuanyi had probably lost hope in them. He did not know if anything had happened to Greiman, Fu Lin, and Darden. However, even if something had happened, there was nothing Lin Feng could do. He could barely protect himself now. Lin Feng checked his mental power. The mental power sphere in his mind had undergone self-recovery during the 3 days. In fact, he had already recovered a certain amount of mental power and did not feel dizzy anymore. As for the injuries on his body, the undying characteristic was really miraculous. After 3 days, all the injuries on his body had recovered. There wasn't even a scar. It was as if he had never experienced that intense battle at all. I wonder if the lizards outside have left. If I go out now, will I encounter the lizards again? Lin Feng still wanted to go out. If he could take over the control room, the mission would be complete. Lin Feng, do not even think about leaving. This ruin must be a research institute, and the defense mechanism of the research institute has already been activated. Those biomodified beasts are actually the defense mechanism. They will not disappear before killing all the invaders. Once you leave this place, no one can guarantee that you would be still that lucky. Then what should I do? Am I trapped here until I die? Hearing Longbetham words, Lin Feng was also a little anxious. He couldn't possibly hide here forever, right? He was a metamorphic realm martial artist, and could actually survive without food for a month or 2. However, if this went on for too long, he would not be able to hold out either. He might even starve to death. It would be a rare occasion indeed for a metamorphic realm martial artist to starve to death. Lin Feng, have you never thought of undergoing a second life transition and defeating those lizards? Although those lizards are biomodified beasts, they are just for show. Once you undergo the second life transition and master the combat body, forget about those 3 lizards. Even 30 of them will not be enough of a match for you. Longbetham's tone was filled with disdain. In fact, neither those biomodified beasts nor the demons of this world impressed Longbetham. Even the combat power of sages was nothing in Longbetham's eyes. This was because be it demons, biomodified beasts, or sages, none of them had cultivated the combat body. A second life transition? I'd like to, but it's too difficult. I don't even have a clue now. Lin Feng thought for a moment. Actually, it wasn't that he had no clue at all. Previously, when he was on the verge of death, he had discovered the mysteries of the human body. They were simply profound. If he could continue to study the mysteries of the human body, there was a high chance that he could undergo a second life transition. However, while a life transition might still be manageable, cultivating the combat body required a huge amount of energy. Longbetham, didn't you say that cultivating a combat body through life transition requires a huge amount of energy? I'm trapped here now. Where can I find energy? Lin Feng remembered very well that, as Longbetham had said on multiple occasions, condensing the combat body required massive energy. It was definitely not a small amount. Even if Lin Feng used 20,000 merit value to purchase energy, it might not be enough. It was already very difficult to obtain a large amount of energy outside, let alone when he was still trapped in this ruin. Who said that you cannot obtain energy here? Take a closer look at what this place is. Longbetham's words surprised Lin Feng. He slowly stood up and looked around carefully for the first time. Initially, he thought that this was just a small hut. However, on closer inspection, he realized that he was gravely mistaken. This was not a small hut at all. It was practically a huge factory. Yes, it was a factory and a factory building. The space was incomparably huge. Looking up, it was at least hundreds of meters tall or even taller. There were scattered lights on the ceiling like the night sky, and a few huge pipes connecting them. Below were some complicated equipment as well as some production lines and the like. Ding! Suddenly, a sparkling crystal seemed to have fallen from the pipe. It was transported to a small hut by the conveyor belt and piled up. What is this place? This was the first time Lin Feng had seen a place like this. There was clearly no one, but it was still operating. This is a production line for energy modules, or rather an energy factory. To put it simply, the researchers of the seventh civilization converted the star power in the sky into substantial energy modules before storing them. This conversion system should operate automatically, and the energy consumed is also replenished by the energy modules. Therefore, in theory, as long as the conversion system is not damaged, this system can keep operating. You mean that a lot of energy might have been accumulated in this energy factory? Lin Feng understood somewhat now. That is right. There are many warehouses there. You can take a look. Lin Feng followed Longbetham's instructions and opened a warehouse. It was sparkling everywhere inside. It turned out that it was already filled with a large amount of energy modules. Then, there was the second warehouse, the third warehouse, and the fourth warehouse. Without exception, all of them were full. The energy modules currently converted were piled up in the fifth warehouse, and more than half of the warehouse had already been filled. How miraculous! They can actually convert star power into physical energy modules. It's just incredible. Lin Feng was very surprised. Currently, human technology did not have much research on astral power. It was only seen as a miraculous power that could be absorbed, transformed, and cultivated continuously by metamorphic realm martial artists. But in reality, in terms of utilization rate, the current human civilization was far inferior to the seventh civilization. There is nothing incredible about it. This is the correct way to use star power. Your so-called martial artists in the present are actually cultivating star power. It is simply ridiculous. Even the astral power in the body of your divine realm martial artists is only equivalent to dozens or hundreds of energy modules. How much can that be worth? Lin Feng was silent for a while before asking, "What's the use of these energy modules?" "They are very useful. For example, for this seventh civilization, all their terrifying weapons required large amounts of energy modules to operate. Also, spaceships need energy modules too. More importantly, their biomodified beasts, be it rats you encountered previously or lizards you encountered later, all of them actually need energy modules to support their movements. Do you understand now? The so-called astral power is actually just a form of energy. Looking at the mountain of energy modules in front of him, and then at the conversion system and production line that were still automatically converting the energy modules, Lin Feng's heart was already in turmoil. Lin Feng was so shocked that he even fell silent. How could he not understand now? Humanity's way of martial arts had actually taken the wrong path. Human civilization had also taken the wrong path at the present. Astral power was indeed worth studying, but it was not about cultivating astral power. Instead, star power should be converted into energy modules and produced constantly. Weren't the defensive weapons in this ruin capable of threatening even sages, just by relying on the accumulation of a large amount of energy modules? With infinite energy, killing a sage would be nothing. This was also the advantage of technological civilizations in the universe. Some technological civilizations could even deal with great life forms at the galactic level. Lin Feng, this much energy is enough for you to cultivate the combat body when completing your second life transition. Of course, the prerequisite is that you can undergo the second life transition. According to your cultivation system, it should be breaking the genetic lock for the second time. That's right. This many energy modules was enough for Lin Feng to condense any kind of combat body, but the prerequisite was that he could undergo a second life transition. However, how could a second life transition be so easy? It had only been a year since Lin Feng broke the genetic lock. Breaking the genetic lock again and undergoing a second life transition in a year was too fast. Even Lin Feng himself was not confident. Moreover, Lin Feng only had a slight idea of direction now, and did not even have a hint of certainty. However, if he did not stay here and work hard to undergo a second life transition, he would be courting death if he went out. Bang, bang, bang. Just as Lin Feng was about to take the risk and give it a try, the footsteps of two more lizards came from outside the door again. There was a faint roar. It seemed like these two lizards were determined to take Lin Feng down. They would not leave until Lin Feng was dead. This also completely dispelled Lin Feng's intention to take the risk. In that case, he might as well focus on researching the problem of the second life transition in this energy factory. Perhaps he could still gain something. Moreover, Lin Feng had already found a direction previously. Lin Feng's direction was also very simple. It was to study the body. Ever since Lin Feng broke the genetic lock, he seemed to have gone astray. He was only focused on fusing the genes of dire beasts or cultivating astral power, and did not study his own body properly at all. Especially now that Lin Feng had strong mental power, his mental power could seep into his body and observe every slight change in his body in detail. Lin Feng had various innate abilities, such as the strength ability, armor ability, petrification ability, sharp horn ability, and the undying characteristic. These various talents were actually abilities unleashed from the depths of genes. Lin Feng was currently using these talents as the foundation to observe the changes in his body, in an attempt to understand the mysteries of the human body. Seeing that Lin Feng was immersed in comprehension, Longbetham did not disturb Lin Feng. In reality, it did not think much of Lin Feng either. However, if it forced Lin Feng now, he might be able to obtain unexpected gains. Armor. Lin Feng used his armor ability. He saw it clearly. The cells began to release a strange energy in a unique manner, before forming a protective layer on the surface of the cells. This was armor. Petrification technique. Lin Feng used the petrification technique. They were both defensive talents, but the principles within his body were completely different. This petrification technique seemed to be an strengthening ability within his cells. By strengthening the cells, the petrification technique could be formed to strengthen the body. Sharp horn. Lin Feng continued to observe the sharp horn and realized that it still arose from a change in the cells. These cells began to transform on their own, gradually forming a special kind of cells that were different from other cells. They were like hedgehogs, possessing terrifying offensive power. Lin Feng focused on studying the increments in strength. When he used his strength ability, his entire body would erupt with a powerful force. When he observed the cells, he realized that the cells expanded in an instant, becoming about twice or even thrice the size of other cells. The human body was composed of countless cells. The cells constantly divided, metabolized, and maintained the activities of the human body. Be it strength ability, armor ability, sharp horn, or so on, they all came from changes at the cellular level. As for deeper levels, such as the interior of the cells, genes, and so on, Lin Feng did not have the ability to study them yet. After observing so many abilities, there was actually one last one, which was also Lin Feng's most important ability, the undying characteristic. Thump. Lin Feng used his nails to scratch his fingers with all his might. Blood immediately dripped to the ground. This bit of pain was insignificant to Lin Feng. Not caring about the injury, he immediately used his mental power to inspect the wound. At the location of the wound, Lin Feng could clearly feel that the cells were rapidly dividing at a speed 10 or even dozens of times faster than usual, replacing the dead and damaged cells. This shocked Lin Feng. Normally, cells would divide constantly with metabolism, but the speed was relatively slow, and there was always a limit. However, his undying characteristic could actually increase the speed of cell division by 10 or even dozens of times in an instant. This was the only way for Lin Feng to recover quickly, no matter how severe his injuries. This was the undying characteristic. An idea seemed to flash through Lin Feng's mind. He wanted to grasp it, but he felt that something was still missing. At this moment, he closed his eyes and carefully recalled the undying characteristic he had observed just now, and the constant division of his cells. Cells could divide, but there had to be something supporting them. What was supporting them to divide so quickly? Lin Feng even recalled the huge, mountain-like tumors that he saw in the darkness when he was asleep before. There were extremely clear patterns on those tumors. Through various complicated transformations, they finally split into another tumor. He carefully compared the scene to cell division again. Wasn't that cell division? Could those tumors be cells? Lin Feng was shocked. At the same time, the fog in his mind seemed to be blown away bit by bit. His mind became clearer and clearer, as if he had discovered some mystery about his body. Cells divide constantly. If I could control the division of the cells with my consciousness, what would happen? Such a thought suddenly appeared in Lin Feng's mind. Moreover, as soon as this thought appeared, he felt that it could not be restrained and could no longer be dispelled. This was incomparably insane and bold. He could not wait to try it. As for the danger, the unknown, Lin Feng did not care at all. It was as if he had understood the mystery of the body, and could not wait to try it out immediately. At this moment, Lin Feng mobilized the massive mental power in his body. He did not plan on controlling all the cells in his body to divide, but wanted to control a single cell. This kind of attempt was nothing short of bold and insane, but Lin Feng was like a drowning man who wanted to hold on to the last straw. No one could stop him. Divide! Lin Feng growled. His massive mental power immediately seized control over a cell and began to divide it. Lin Feng had never tried to control the division of a cell before, but he was already attempting now. Gathering his massive mental power, he controlled a cell tightly like a heavy hammer. Divide! How tiny was a cell? Even a speck of dust was much larger than a cell. Lin Feng's mental power controlled the cell division with almost no difficulty. Thus, the cell divided. 1, 2, 4, 8, 16. Lin Feng was only controlling a single cell, but now a large number of cells were dividing madly and expanding exponentially. If it were a single cell, Lin Feng would not be exerting any effort at all. In fact, it would be very easy. Then 2, 4, 8, 16, and even the tens of thousands of cells would be somewhat difficult for Lin Feng. And what would happen with so many cells dividing? Lin Feng was dividing a normal cell in his palm. As the cell continued to divide, Lin Feng felt as if his palm was tearing apart. It was growing rapidly at a visible speed. This situation was just too bizarre. But as his cells divided, Lin Feng was overjoyed. He had found the direction. Wasn't this how life transitions happened? So the method of life transition has always been hidden in my body. Lin Feng did not know if this was how other people underwent life transitions, but he had gotten the inspiration from the undying characteristic. Then, he carefully studied his body and finally thought of a way to divide cells to complete the second life transition. His cells divided countless times, but nothing untoward happened. Lin Feng no longer hesitated. He had to undergo a second life transition, become a divine realm martial artist, and cultivate the combat body to resolve the current crisis. Hence, Lin Feng mobilized all his mental power and enveloped all the cells in his body. Divide! Boom! The billions of cells in Lin Feng's body seemed to be shaking and cheering. Lin Feng's mental power immediately felt some pressure. But it was only some pressure. After all, Lin Feng's mental power sphere had already undergone a metamorphosis and reached the second level of the Bemand mental guidance technique. If not for his formidable mental power, Lin Feng's method of life transition would be impossible. The transition is actually beginning, but this kind of transition method is really unheard of. Long Betham was also paying close attention to Lin Feng. As a mechanical life form, it had seen many life transitions of experts, even those with 3 or 4 life transitions. In reality, every life form underwent life transition in a different way. There was no specific way for life transition. Some life forms underwent life transition for no reason, while some life forms required some stimulation to complete a life transition. Some lives focused on studying the body, thereby attaining life transitions. Lin Feng also underwent life transition by studying his own body. However, Lin Feng used a method of cell division to undergo life transitions. What would this lead to? This would cause Lin Feng to need a large amount of energy, even more than other life forms' life transitions. As his cells continued to divide, the more energy Lin Feng needed, the stronger the combat body he condensed would be. The combat bodies were basically all about the same. There were various different focuses, but even the same type of combat body were divided into inferior and superior ones. This was actually based on the method of life transition. Lin Feng's method of life transition was undoubtedly the most suitable method for battle. The combat body he condensed would also be the most suitable for battle. This was relatively rare even in the universe. Long Betham observed Lin Feng's life transition carefully. It did not disturb Lin Feng. At a time like this, Lin Feng could not be disturbed by anyone. Otherwise, all his efforts might be in vain. As the cells continued to divide, Lin Feng's body continued to expand. However, cell division required a huge amount of energy. Where would the energy come from? Some of the energy in Lin Feng's body, in addition to some astral power that had automatically recovered within 3 days, was converted into energy for his cells and disappeared without a trace. But how could this little energy be enough? Lin Feng felt that his entire body was very famished. This hunger was transmitted from the depths of his cells. It was as if Lin Feng's entire body was hungry. At this moment, no matter how much food there was, he could consume all of it. In reality, ever since Lin Feng broke the genetic lock for the first time, he had rarely experienced such hunger. He did not expect to be so hungry now. Quick, go to the first warehouse. There are a large number of energy modules there. Lin Feng, remember to condense the combat body and cultivate the combat body that you think is most suitable. Long Betham's voice sounded in Lin Feng's mind. This also reminded Lin Feng that he was undergoing a life transition. The amount of energy required for cell division in particular would be incredibly massive. Coincidentally, this was an energy factory left behind by the 7th civilization. Moreover, the energy from the energy modules accumulated over the years was already an astronomical figure. No matter how much energy Lin Feng needed, he could find it here. Hence, Lin Feng did not hesitate anymore. He immediately rushed into the first warehouse. Many energy modules were piled up in the warehouse. In Lin Feng's eyes, these energy modules were simply the most delicious things in the world. He entered the warehouse directly. He only needed to press his hand on these energy modules to absorb a large amount of energy from them. Good. Good. What abundant energy. Lin Feng was so comfortable that he even moaned. A large amount of energy surged into Lin Feng's body, and the speed of cell division in his body increased exponentially in an instant. Lin Feng's body began to expand. The clothes on his body could no longer hold out. With a ripping sound, his clothes tore apart. Lin Feng's shoes were also broke at once. At this moment, Lin Feng was already naked. His naked body was devouring energy like a whale guzzling water. The energy modules in the huge warehouse were actually shrinking at a visible rate. It was enough to show how much energy Lin Feng was absorbing. Of course, in the process of constant cell division, Lin Feng did not forget to cultivate the combat body. The combat body guidance technique stated that one had to use powerful mental power to guide the cells to restructure during the life transition, and finally cultivate the combat body. Right now, Lin Feng's cells were constantly dividing. Lin Feng no longer needed to guide them with his mental power. They were still dividing automatically, and at a very fast speed. The various combat bodies in the combat body guidance technique immediately appeared in Lin Feng's mind. Almost every combat body was firmly imprinted in Lin Feng's memory. Right now, Lin Feng needed to choose a combat body. Every one of these combat bodies had a focus. There was no such thing as the strongest combat body, only the most suitable one. Hence, Lin Feng had to choose a combat body that was most suitable for him. There were dozens of constitutions in Lin Feng's mind. They were all painstakingly collected by Bamond, and some were even created by Bamond himself. There was no such thing as the strongest combat body, only the most suitable one. Lin Feng remembered this sentence firmly. What kind of combat body was the most suitable for him? Lin Feng was also pondering. He was undergoing a life transition through cell division. Cell division could increase strength, restorative ability, and so on. Then, only a combat body focusing on these aspects would be more suitable for him. Soon, Lin Feng discovered a type of combat body called the tidal combat body. This kind of constitution was created by a great galactic life form when witnessing cosmic catastrophes. The wave after wave of cosmic catastrophe were infinite as surging tides. Hence, this kind of constitution had extremely strong defense. Its focus was defense. When attacking this combat body, it could only be destroyed by breaking it in one go. Otherwise, it would recover extremely quickly, and was very difficult to kill. Of course, this kind of combat body also had very powerful strength. Coupled with his own characteristics, Lin Feng felt that the title combat body was actually very suitable for him. Therefore, Lin Feng did not hesitate any longer and chose the title combat body. Details of the title combat body naturally appeared in his mind. Hence, Lin Feng began to guide the cells in his body to restructure constantly, arranging and reorganizing them according to the title combat body. This was a long process. Every time his cells divided and restructured, Lin Feng needed to use his mental power to guide them accurately. Hence, he needed extremely strong mental power. If Lin Feng was still at the first level of the mental guidance technique, he would not be able to successfully condense the title combat body at all. As Lin Feng began to condense the title combat body, his body also expanded further, and it expanded very regularly. Every time his cells were restructured, his body would expand once. Originally, Lin Feng was only about over a meter tall. However, as his cells continued to divide and reorganize, and with the support of a large amount of energy, his body also began to expand rapidly. 2 meters, 3 meters, 4 meters, 5 meters. In the blink of an eye, Lin Feng expanded several times, turning into a small giant. This was not an illusion, nor was it an illusory body. It was a real body, filled with terrifying power. Almost every time it expanded, Lin Feng's strength soared explosively. Yes, soaring. Lin Feng felt that his strength was soaring at this moment. Originally, Lin Feng had more than 80,000 strands of astral power, which could theoretically unleash about 320,000 tons of strength. Of course, that was only theoretical. For an ordinary metamorphic realm martial artist, unleashing 9,999 strands of astral power was already slightly unbearable for their body, let alone over 80,000 strands of astral power in Lin Feng. If it really erupted, even Lin Feng's body probably would not be able to withstand it. However, with the strength of Lin Feng's body and the eruption of astral power in terms of raw strength, it should not be a problem for him to exceed 10,000 tons of strength, or even reach tens of thousands of tons of strength. Now, there was no longer any astral power in Lin Feng's body. All the astral power had been absorbed by his combat body as energy. His cells kept dividing and restructuring, and his body kept expanding. Although he had no astral power, Lin Feng's strength increased explosively. 50,000 tons, 100,000 tons, 150,000 tons. Divine realm experts were not evaluated by their strength. For instance, could the void bubble be measured by strength? However, when strength reached a certain level, it was definitely a standard of evaluation. As Lin Feng's body expanded rapidly, his strength also increased rapidly. In the end, even Lin Feng himself could no longer calculate how strong he was. When Lin Feng's body reached 10 meters, he already collided with the roof of the warehouse. However, Lin Feng's body did not stop expanding. Instead, it continued to expand and grow. 11 meters, 15 meters, 20 meters. In the blink of an eye, Lin Feng's body had grown to a height of 20 meters. Moreover, it still showed no signs of stopping and continued to grow. This was what the combat body was. Under normal circumstances, the combat body from the first life transition was only about 10 meters in size. Lin Feng had already missed the first life transition, but he did not miss the second life transition. He seized the opportunity. In the second life transition, a combat body could generally reach over 100 meters, or even hundreds of meters. Depending on the way a life form underwent life transition and the combat body it condensed, the height it could grow to in the end would actually differ. Lin Feng did not know how tall he could grow in the end, and he was not in the mood to think about it now. All his energy was focused on condensing his combat body. The title combat body began to take shape slowly, and the speed far exceeded Lin Feng's expectations. This was because the combat body guidance technique made calculations according to the speed of ordinary life transitions, but Lin Feng's method of life transition was cell division. The speed at which cells divided and condensed the combat body was simply astonishing. Of course, the energy consumed was also very shocking. When Lin Feng's combat body reached 40 meters, the energy in the first warehouse had already been exhausted. Forget about 20,000 merit value. Such a huge amount of energy required was impossible to purchase even with 200,000 merit value. Lin Feng was even a little glad that he had come to this ruin and found the energy factory. Otherwise, even with his life transition, the energy required to cultivate the tidal combat body would be extremely troublesome. If the cultivation of the combat body failed in the end due to a lack of energy, it would really be too late for regrets. Taking advantage of the fact that he had sufficient energy in the energy factory this time, Lin Feng decisively condensed the tidal combat body to its peak state. Hence, his 40-meter-tall body easily demolished the first warehouse with a single smack. When he arrived at the second warehouse, Lin Feng gave the second warehouse another smack and easily dismantled it. The energy modules that were piled up in the warehouse immediately scattered all over the ground. Lin Feng took a deep breath and absorbed the large amount of energy modules on the ground like a whale quaffing water. Thus, his body continued to grow. 50 meters, 60 meters, 70 meters, 80 meters. At 80 meters, Lin Feng's body was already too huge, like a prehistoric behemoth. The energy modules in the second warehouse were devoured, followed by the third warehouse. 90 meters, 100 meters, 110 meters, 120 meters. Without any hesitation, Lin Feng came to the fourth warehouse. 130 meters, 140 meters, 150 meters, 160 meters. In the blink of an eye, Lin Feng's body had already grown to 160 meters. Fortunately, in order to attract star power, the roof of the energy factory was very, very tall, reaching hundreds of meters. Moreover, the place was very spacious, enough to accommodate Lin Feng's current terrifying combat body. There was still the fifth warehouse. Lin Feng went on to the fifth warehouse, which was still more than half filled with energy modules. 170 meters, 180 meters, 190 meters. When Lin Feng's tidal combat body reached 190 meters, the speed at which it condensed clearly slowed down. Moreover, Lin Feng had a vague feeling of being very full. He knew that it was basically almost at the limit, but he did not give up and continued to condense. 195 meters, 198 meters, 200 meters. Finally, when the tidal combat body reached 200 meters, Lin Feng stopped. He had a feeling of perfection, as if his current combat body had reached its most perfect state. So this is the tidal combat body? Lin Feng raised his hand. His hand had already become a colossus that could easily crush a mountain with a single palm. At this moment, Lin Feng was like a towering giant in the myths, standing tall in the energy factory. Even though the energy factory was huge, it was not that convenient for him to move around with his massive body. A height of 200 meters was simply terrifying. It was about the height of a 50-story building. There's no astral power, nor any strange abnormal power, only raw power, the power of the combat body. Lin Feng was still sensing the combat body carefully. This combat body was actually just his body. There was nothing illusory about it. It was entirely a part of his body. Moreover, unlike martial artists who had astral power or other powers, it was similar to those dire beasts, which relied purely on their own physical strength. One's own body was the strongest. Petrification technique. Lin Feng tried to use the petrification technique, but there was no reaction. Armor. There was no reaction either. Next, there was no reaction for the sharp horn too. On the other hand, for the undying characteristic, Lin Feng's combat body seemed to have an astonishing restorative ability, similar to the undying characteristic. However, Lin Feng knew that this was not the undying characteristic. After his second life transition, all his previous innate abilities had disappeared. To be precise, they had not disappeared, but were integrated into his combat body. For example, the defense of Lin Feng's current combat body was shockingly strong. Even if he was injured, he could recover immediately. This was very similar to the armor petrification technique and the undying characteristic. This was the characteristic of the tidal combat body, which was very suitable for Lin Feng. Such a massive combat body was already earth-shattering in the eyes of humans, like a prehistoric behemoth. However, in the vast universe, it was simply a drop in the ocean and far too insignificant. In the cosmic cultivation system, the combat body was the only standard of measurement. How could one accommodate word-annihilating power without a massive combat body? That would be nonsensical and mythical. The so-called deities were as insignificant as dust. How could they destroy a planet or even a star? That was impossible. No matter how talented a life form was, it was impossible for its body to accommodate the energy to destroy a planet. Even cultivators in the cosmic system followed scientific laws in a sense. After all, even something as powerful as a black hole, which could devour everything, including stars, was still several times larger than an ordinary celestial planet. Although size could not determine everything, it could be used as a certain standard of measurement. Lin Feng's mere 200-meter-tall combat body was only a second life transition life form under the cosmic cultivation system. With such a huge body, Lin Feng did not find it inconvenient to move. Instead, he was very agile. Of course, agility was only relative. The tidal combat body's fortes were defense and strength. For strength, Lin Feng attempted nonopal body tempering, but there was no reaction. Actually, nonopal body tempering was just a martial art created by the invincible fist sage based on the structure of an ordinary human body. What use could it be for Lin Feng's current 200-meter body? However, there were also secret techniques for the combat body. In the combat body guidance technique, every combat body had its own secret technique. However, these secret techniques were all secret techniques for explosive power. For example, if Lin Feng wanted to go all out in a fight at the risk of his life, he could use these secret techniques for explosive power. Using just the tidal combat body, he could instantly unleash all the power contained in the combat body, and even expend a portion of the energy in the combat body to unleash extraordinary power. Of course, it would cause some damage to the combat body, but it would be extraordinarily powerful. As for techniques, in reality, there were no techniques on combat bodies. The path of the combat body was to be forefront and suppress others by force. What use were techniques? When two combat bodies fought each other, the effects of hitting the head and the body were actually the same. Neither of them had any fatal flaws. It was purely a battle of brute force and energy consumption in the combat body. The endurance of the tidal combat body was obviously stronger, especially since Lin Feng's chose the method of cell division for his life transition, which caused his tidal combat body to be far stronger than the tidal combat body of ordinary life forms. Lin Feng, congratulations on your second life transition and mastering the tidal combat body. Longbetham's voice sounded in Lin Feng's mind. It was obvious that Longbetham's tone was rather happy. Even though it did not think highly of Lin Feng's natural talent, it was a little surprised that Lin Feng could undergo a second life transition and even master the tidal combat body in such a short period of time. For the first time, it seemed to understand the meaning of impermanence in life. In the vast cosmos, there were only too many talented life forms. Those powerful life forms that were born with 4 life transitions and matured with 5 life transitions found it very difficult to produce a planetary life form with 6 life transitions. On the other hand, certain life forms with very poor natural talent and insignificant existences relied on their own hard work, struggles, and various opportunities to strive to advance in the vast universe. In the end, they instead underwent 6 life transitions and became great planetary life forms. Life was impermanent. Every life form, no matter how lacking in natural talent, had infinite possibilities. Although mechanical life forms were considered the life forms least suited for cultivation, from what Longbetham knew, had not some mechanical life forms become planetary life forms too? In fact, it was precisely for that glimmer of hope that Longbetham was willing to go through so much trouble, become the guardian of Baman's legacy, and pilot the spaceship to find the fated individual. Looking at Lin Feng's slightly confused and even somewhat juvenile face, for the first time, Longbetham felt that Lin Feng might not have relied entirely on luck to reach his current level. Lin Feng, what are you still leaving your combat body out for? Only with Longbetham's reminder did Lin Feng remember that the combat body could be put away. Hence, according to the method in the combat body guidance technique, his massive combat body began to shrink rapidly, eventually shrinking to Lin Feng's original size. At this size, Lin Feng could still display strength far greater than that of a metamorphic realm martial artist. Just his physical strength alone was much stronger than that of ordinary divine realm martial artists. However, that was all. If he wanted to increase his combat strength, he still had to release his combat body. He did not need to release his entire combat body, and could just release part of it. For example, in the next moment, Lin Feng's body expanded to 5 meters in size. His entire body was filled with explosive power, making him feel as if he was omnipotent. This was the second life transition. According to martial classification, he was now a true divine realm martial artist. In reality, even at only 5 meters tall, Lin Feng's power already surpassed demon generals. As for how strong he could become when he used his full combat body, even Lin Feng himself did not know. However, of all the martial artists he had seen, Lin Feng was confident that he could defeat everyone except Sage Kong and Sage Yuanyi, including the renowned dragon rider Hao Shi among divine realm martial artists. Perhaps divine realm martial artists were no longer Lin Feng's match. As for meta-divine realm martial artists or even sages, Lin Feng would only know after fighting them. Ever since Lin Feng had mastered the combat body, he had extraordinary control over his body. When he was restructuring his cells previously, he had already sensed something external in his body. He extended his hand, and a metal sphere gradually condensed in his hand. It was the genetic fusion device. The genetic fusion device had a certain supportive effect on martial artists who had undergone for life transitions or below, but this did not include Lin Feng, who had cultivated the combat body. After Lin Feng had cultivated the combat body, the current genetic fusion device was actually no longer of any aid to him. Just as Longbetham had said, this genetic fusion device was only an auxiliary aid. It was not directly helpful to life transitions and only provided support. Back when Lin Feng underwent his first life transition, he did not rely on the genetic fusion device either. Instead, he relied on his own comprehension in life or death situations to finally break the genetic lock for the first time and complete his first life transition. The greatest use of a genetic fusion device was to fuse with the genes of other dire beasts, allowing a martial artist's body to become stronger. Now that Lin Feng had mastered the combat body, what dire beast would be stronger than his combat body? So, this genetic fusion device could not help Lin Feng in further life transitions, nor could it increase his physical strength. Naturally, it had become useless. To the mechanical civilization, the genetic fusion device was just a small gadget. Longbetham, can someone else use this genetic fusion device of mine? Lin Feng actually had an idea. Although this genetic fusion device was no longer useful to him, it was still very useful for professional martial artists, and even martial artists with their first life transition. He could give them to his parents or his sister and so on. With it, they could improve their strength and gain more success in practicing martial arts with less effort. They might even have a chance to break the genetic lock. However, Longbetham shook his head and said, "These genetic fusion devices have all been locked. Before you undergo for life transitions and accept the true legacy, no one else can use the genetic fusion devices. Of course, after your death, such restrictions will no longer apply." Lin Feng was a little disappointed. He had wanted to let his parents and sister use it. However, on second thought, it wasn't entirely impossible. He had already undergone 2 life transitions. As long as he worked hard and strove for 4 life transitions to obtain the Baman's true inheritance, all the genetic fusion devices would be unlocked. Then, wouldn't it be up to him to decide who could use it? 3 or 4 days have passed. I wonder how Greiman and the others are doing. I have to get out quickly. Since Lin Feng had already undergone 2 life transitions and mastered the combat body, his strength had improved greatly. Naturally, he had nothing to fear from those 3 lizards. Thus, he asked Longbetham to open the door to the energy factory. Rumble. As the door opened, however, Lin Feng realized that the lizards had disappeared. Where are the 2 lizards? 3 days ago, Lin Feng had been hunted down by 2 lizards. In fact, after he hid in the energy factory, the 2 lizards would appear outside the door from time to time. Why was there no sign of them now? Could they have left to hunt down Greiman and the others? Lin Feng thought of a possibility. If Greiman and the others exposed their whereabouts, they would indeed be easily hunted down by the lizards. At this thought, Lin Feng no longer hesitated. He immediately rushed out and arrived at the control room. As expected, the control room was also empty. There was no sign of any lizards. Longbetham, how long will it take for you to take over this ruin if I place you in the control room? I cannot say for certain, but it should not be a problem to shut down the defensive weapons outside. About half an hour. All right, turn off the defensive weapons outside first. I'll look for Greiman and the other two. Hence, Lin Feng let Longbetham enter the control center of the control room. With Longbetham's ability, there should be no problem. Right now, Lin Feng had to worry about Greiman and the others. He hoped that they would be fine. In 3 days, Greiman had recovered his astral power. Thinking about how Lin Feng had lured away 2 lizards alone and created the conditions for him to escape, Greiman was very touched. Hence, as soon as his astral power recovered, he immediately headed for the direction Lin Feng had escaped. No matter what, he had to see if Lin Feng was all right. If Lin Feng was fine, he could still help Lin Feng. When Greiman came all the way to the control room, he realized that 2 lizards were wandering around the control room, but there was no sign of Lin Feng. His heart sank. Could something have happened to Lin Feng? At this thought, Greiman's heart ached deeply. He felt that Lin Feng traded his own life for his. Originally, Greiman wanted to continue searching for Lin Feng, but his whereabouts were discovered by the 2 lizards. Greiman had no choice but to run. Fortunately, there were way too many forks in the ruin. Moreover, they extended in all directions. By darting around continuously, Greiman was not discovered by the lizards for a time. And 2 days later, he also discovered Fu Lin and Darden. However, both Fu Lin and Darden were in a miserable state. Both were seriously injured. Darden had lost an arm, and Fu Lin was limping. The 3 of them gathered and hid in a small room. It wasn't until the 3rd day that the lizards found the 3 of them. No one knew how they were found. Perhaps it was by tracking Fu Lin and Darden's blood traces, but in any case, the lizards had found the 3 of them. Leaning against the hard door, the 3 of them resisted with all their might. However, as the door was gradually broken open with each slam, the 3 of them reached a life-or-death juncture. It's really the end for us this time. Fu Lin looked a little weary. She had already been running for a few days, only to unexpectedly find that she still could not outrun death in the end. If only Leader were here. Greiman, did you discover Leader's body or not? Darden gritted his teeth and asked. I didn't find any corpse. Perhaps it was devoured by them, but he might also still be alive. However, so what if he's alive? Right? Leader can't defeat these 3 lizards either, but I still hope Leader can survive. It'd best if he can close the defense mechanism of the ruins and complete the mission while the 3 lizards are distracted by us. That's right. No matter what, we must complete the mission. Greiman and the others were already prepared to die. They were not a match for even 1 lizard, let alone 3. Bang, bang, bang. As the 3 lizards slammed into the door again and again, the door shook more and more violently. Crunch. Suddenly, the door was smashed open. The 3 lizards' ferocious eyes immediately landed on Greiman and the others. The 3 of them looked at each other, knowing that they were probably doomed this time. Let's fight with our lives. This time, I'll unleash my innate ability again and restrain them. Run as far as you can, but whether you're fortunate enough to escape this time will depend on your luck. Greiman took a deep breath. He unleashed his ability for Fu Lin and Darden to escape. Whether the 2 of them could escape, Greiman's death was certain. On the count of 3, 1, 2, 3, go. In an instant, Greiman unleashed his innate ability. An invisible force enveloped the bodies of the 3 lizards. However, just as Fu Lin and Darden were about to give their all to escape, a loud bang came from behind the 3 lizards. Boom! It was as if a giant beast was stomping on the ground. The passageway and the room all shook violently. Could it be an even stronger demon? No, it's not a demon. It's Leader. Through the crack in the door, Fu Lin saw the familiar figure behind the 3 lizards. Her tone was incomparably excited. What? Leader. It's really Lin Feng. Run. What are you doing here? Greiman's eyes were bloodshot. What was Lin Feng doing here? Wasn't he courting death by coming at a time like this? At this moment, the three lizards had already turned around and were staring at Lin Feng with bloodshot eyes. It was indeed Lin Feng. However, there seemed to be something wrong with Lin Feng at this moment. When his foot landed on the ground, it emitted a heavy thud, attracting the attention of the three lizards. It was these three lizards that had hunted Lin Feng down until he had nowhere to go. Now he had finally found them. Lin Feng glanced at the three of them. Fortunately, they were not injured. Hence, a smile appeared on Lin Feng's lips. I've finally found you. Gore! As if provoked, the three lizards suddenly pounced towards Lin Feng. Back then, two of the lizards had pursued Lin Feng until he had nowhere to run, let alone the three lizards now. This was the technological crystallization of the seventh civilization. The biomodified beasts created were comparable to peak demon generals. Humph! Lin Feng snorted coldly. At the same time, his body actually expanded rapidly. Originally, his body was only covered with the torn clothes from before. Now, as his body grew, his clothes immediately tore apart as well. Lin Feng's body continued to expand. In the blink of an eye, he had expanded to more than 5 meters tall, looking like a small giant. He looked down coldly at the three lizards. Although the three lizards were a little surprised, their intelligence was not that high. They were only artificially created biomodified beasts, slaughtering machines that were only bent on slaughtering, and only wanted to kill Lin Feng. Get lost! The three lizards pounced over. Lin Feng swung his fist and smashed at them directly. There was no technique, only the rawest clash of strength, meeting force with force. Bang! Lin Feng sent one of the lizards flying with a punch. At the same time, the other lizard opened its bloody mouth and bit on Lin Feng's arm. However, Lin Feng's arm grew thicker again, and it seemed to be very tough. The lizard could not bite through it. Die! Lin Feng grabbed the lizard with both hands and twisted its head. The originally muscular and powerful lizard that seemed to have infinite strength seemed like paper in Lin Feng's hands at this moment. He twisted hard with both hands. Thump! Lin Feng had actually twisted off the lizard's head. That was a peak demon general. Lin Feng threw the decapitated lizard down. Even without its head, the lizard's corpse struggled a few times before going motionless. There was still the third lizard. A trace of fear actually appeared in its eyes. Then, countless gray rays suddenly shot out from the dense, spiderweb-like eyes on its head. Lin Feng's heart skipped a beat. He knew about these gray rays. They could destroy all defenses and were extremely bizarre. He hurriedly blocked with his hand, and his palm immediately expanded like a fan, blocking Lin Feng's entire body. Thud, thud, thud. Lin Feng could sense the heat, but it was like a mosquito bite. He retracted his hand and took a closer look, but not even his skin was broken. Only at this moment did Lin Feng truly realize how strong he was now, and how powerful his tidal combat body was. Ha-ha, creatures! Let's see where you can run this time. Lin Feng threw his head back and laughed aloud. His entire body grew a few meters taller. The two lizards actually wanted to escape, but just as they turned around, Lin Feng grabbed their tails with one hand. The two lizards frantically tried to snag the ground with their sharp claws, but only left deep scratches on the ground in futility as Lin Feng lifted them upside down. Hiya! Lin Feng grabbed the tails of two lizards and smashed them into the ground. Bang! 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 He smashed again and again. Lin Feng seemed to be grabbing two tiny mice instead of two demon generals as he smashed them with all his might. After smashing them for more than 10 or 20 times, the two lizards were already badly mangled. Their heads had been smashed in, and there was no longer any sign of life in them. Thump! Lin Feng tossed away the corpses of the two lizards and went straight to the door. He grabbed either side of the door and tore hard. There was a ripping noise. The door was ruthlessly ripped open, revealing a huge crack. You can come out now, Lin Feng said to the person inside. Greiman, Fu Lin, and Darden looked at each other. They walked out of the house one after another, but when they looked up at Lin Feng, who was like a small giant, they found it somewhat incredulous, even absurd. They had seen with their own eyes just now that the three previously ferocious and invincible lizards were actually killed by Lin Feng with ease, as if it's a parlor trick to him. Moreover, his methods were extremely brutal. Furthermore, Lin Feng did not look anything like a martial artist now. Are you really Lin Feng? Darden stammered in disbelief. Darden, you don't recognize me? Lin Feng, did you break the genetic lock again and become a divine realm martial artist? Greiman seemed to have thought of something and asked hurriedly. That's right. I broke the genetic lock and reached the divine realm. Lin Feng immediately shrunk his body. However, he was still naked. Even though Lin Feng was used to extraordinary experiences, he still felt somewhat embarrassed at this moment, especially with a female martial artist like Fu Lin around. Fu Lin hurriedly turned around. Lin Feng said awkwardly, "Can anyone give me some clothes? The martial arts I practice are a little special. So, wear mine." Greiman took off a shirt for Lin Feng to put on for the time being to stop the situation from being too awkward. Looking at the blood on the ground and the corpses of the three lizards, Grim and the other two sighed. Lin Feng was actually the first to reach the divine realm they had always coveted. It had to be known that Lin Feng had only broken the genetic lock for a year. Even though Greiman was also known as a genius, and even though Fu Lin and Darden were both called rare geniuses, they could not even feel jealous when facing Lin Feng. This had already exceeded their understanding. How could anyone break the genetic lock for the second time within a year? Even the 9 sages could not possibly become divine realm martial artists in such a short period of time. But no matter what, Lin Feng had already become a divine realm martial artist. Moreover, he had killed 3 peak demon generals and saved their lives. It appeared that they could complete the mission now. I found the control room. We can go to the control room and try to shut down the defense mechanism of the ruins. Lin Feng explained briefly to the 3 of them, then led them to the control room. Only Greiman stared at Lin Feng's back thoughtfully. He could clearly sense that when Lin Feng was fighting the 3 lizards just now, there was no fluctuation of astral power at all. Forget about divine realm martial artists. Even a metadivine realm martial artist or a sage would mainly utilize astral power in battle. There was no fluctuation of astral power on Lin Feng's body at all, yet he could easily kill 3 peak demon generals. Was this even possible? Moreover, Lin Feng's body had expanded into a small giant just now. Lin Feng's explanation was that he cultivated a special astral martial art. Grim was experienced and knowledgeable, but he had never heard of such a miraculous martial art that could make a person's body expand so rapidly in an instant. However, Lin Feng had saved him in the end. Greiman could only bury these doubts in his mind. Lin Feng led Greiman, Fu Lin, and Darden to the control room successfully. They did not encounter any danger in the meantime. According to what Longbetham had said, this ruin should be a research institute of the 7th civilization. The strongest defense mechanism inside was probably the 3 lizards. After Lin Feng dealt with the 3 lizards, they could naturally come to the control room without obstruction. This is the control room? This was the first time Fu Lin and the others had come to the control room. They looked at the myriad of buttons. There was no way they could take over such a sci-fi control room. Hence, they could only immediately open the chip that Sage Kong had given them, hoping to find some solutions from it. Greiman tried to contact them through the communicator, but there was no signal from it either. Lin Feng, on the other hand, calmly came to the big screen in the control room. At this moment, Longbetham returned to Lin Feng's communicator and said in Lin Feng's mind, "This ruin is indeed a research institute. In about 10 minutes, I will be able to completely deactivate the defense mechanism." "That's great. You don't have to take over the ruins. When the time comes, I'll contact Sage Kong and ask them to send professionals into the ruins. By the way, make it more realistic when you turn off the defense mechanism. Don't get discovered. You do not have to worry about these things. Of course I know. However, there are many beneficial things in this ruin. There is also a message hidden within. Would you like to know? What message? There's some information regarding the Taran civilization, that is, the 7th civilization. They call themselves the Turan civilization. There is some information regarding the reason for the destruction of the Turan civilization. There's such a message? Show me. Hence, a message quickly appeared in Lin Feng's mind. It had already been automatically translated into words that Lin Feng could recognize. This message was left behind by an ordinary researcher at the Research Institute. Originally, the Turan civilization was at its apex and had even conquered many areas. Some dire beast hordes were also controlled by the Turan civilization, and the Turan civilization even attempted to break out of the canopy. However, one day, a terrifying behemoth appeared. The word behemoth was used in the message. According to the description, the behemoth was so massive that it was unimaginable. As soon as the behemoth appeared, it began to destroy the Turan civilization. Moreover, the behemoth appeared able to command other dire beasts. Hence, under the continuous siege of a great many dire beasts and the behemoth, the Turan civilization came to a critical moment of life and death. The Turan civilization had a central computer that controlled the daily operation of the entire civilization. It was the product of the intelligence of the Turan civilization. However, as the behemoth trampled on the holy city and destroyed the central computer, the Turan civilization collapsed in an instant. Everyone in the Turan civilization was called to battle. Everyone in the Research Institute also retreated from the institute. Then, they activated the defense mechanism and never returned. This message was very short and simple, but some of the information revealed shocked Lin Feng. The Turan civilization was undoubtedly a highly advanced technological civilization. Just by looking at this research institute and the defense mechanism capable of threatening sages, it was obvious that the Turan civilization was definitely stronger than the current human civilization. However, such a powerful civilization had actually been destroyed. Moreover, those researchers left and never returned. All traces of the Turan civilization seemed to have been erased. The behemoth was mentioned repeatedly in this message. Could this behemoth be what destroyed the Turan civilization? But no matter what, the Turan civilization had been destroyed by an external force. How strong must this force of destruction be, that it could destroy such a powerful civilization? Lin Feng did not dare to think about it. Longbetham, with our current technological ability, can we translate this information? You can definitely translate it. This message is not that complicated. It can be translated in about 3 months. Since it can be translated, leave this message as it is and don't modify it. Lin Feng pondered. Why was the Turan civilization destroyed? Or rather, why were the first 8 civilizations destroyed? It had to be known that any race that could be considered a civilization must be massive. They must have powerful martial strength. For example, despite the many dire beasts in the outland in the present, they could not be considered a dire beast civilization. If the destruction of a civilization only occurred once, it might still be a natural disaster. However, if the destruction of civilizations occurred for a total of 8 times, it would be out of the ordinary. Since the first 8 civilizations could be destroyed, would human civilization be destroyed as well? Longbetham, you've been in this world for so long. You should know the real reason for the destruction of the Turan civilization, right? Or rather, do you know what the real reason for the destruction of the first 8 civilizations is? Lin Feng asked Longbetham. He did not believe that Longbetham would not know. Longbetham was silent for a long time before answering slowly. Your world is a little special. When I landed in your world back then, your world was still at the end of the second civilization. As for the reason for its destruction, I do know. However, this is not something you can deal with now. If you can undergo 4 life transitions one day, I will tell you everything I know. Lin Feng pondered. It was obvious that Longbetham knew the reason behind the destruction of the first 8 civilizations. In fact, Longbetham was either unwilling or afraid to say it. That meant that even with Lin Feng's current second life transition and cultivation of the tidal combat body, he still could not resolve the crisis. Longbetham was unwilling to say it, and Lin Feng did not force it. However, he already had a faint sense of crisis. Perhaps the 9 sages knew something, which was why they were so eager to find technology in ancient civilizations to enhance the overall strength of humanity. The defense mechanism has been switched off. Lin Feng, you just need to press that red button by accident, and the defense mechanism will be completely switched off. At that time, communication will not be a problem. Just as Lin Feng was deep in thought, Longbetham's voice sounded again. It turned out that the defense mechanism could already be switched off. Lin Feng naturally saw the red button that Longbetham mentioned. The reason why he did not ask Longbetham to turn off the defense mechanism directly was to avoid suspicion. Hence, Lin Feng said to Greiman and the others, who were frowning and thinking hard, "Come over quickly. What is it?" Fu Lin and the others walked over and looked at Lin Feng in confusion. Lin Feng pointed at the red button and said with a serious expression, "I took a look just now. There are many devices here, but this red button is so eye-catching and is placed in the middle. I suspect that it's the control center. Should we press it and give it a try?" Greiman and the others were all a little hesitant. What if it was very dangerous? However, when they thought about how Lin Feng had already reached the divine realm and the strength he had displayed previously, even if there was any danger, Lin Feng could deal with it. In any case, they had no clue, so they might as well give it a try. "I agree. Let's give it a try." "That's right. I agree too." Greiman and the others all agreed to it. Hence, Lin Feng did not wait anymore. He immediately reached out and pressed the red button. Beep. As Lin Feng pressed the red button, the screens in the control room seemed to light up. "That's the outside? The surveillance cameras are on. There are surveillance cameras in every cabin. Look at those rat-dire beasts. They've all retreated. I think my communicator has a signal again." The defense mechanism must have been switched off. Everyone was overjoyed. Lin Feng also heaved a sigh of relief, and a smile appeared on his face. Now that the defense mechanism was switched off and the communicator had a signal, everyone immediately contacted Sage Kong. When Sage Kong received the call from Lin Feng and the others, he was overjoyed. They had originally thought that Lin Feng and the others had failed, and did not expect the mission to actually be successful. "Wait inside. Sage Yuani and I will bring people over immediately." Sage Kong and Sage Yuani gathered a multitude of personnel as quickly as possible and rushed over. As expected, the defensive weapons outside the ruins did not react at all and no longer posed a threat to the sages. When Sage Kong led many scientists and martial artists into the control room and saw Lin Feng, he finally heaved a sigh of relief. "Sage Kong, Sage Yuani, we were fortunate enough to fulfill our mission and deactivate the defense mechanism. It's just that we haven't taken over the ruins yet. We need the scientists brought by the sages to work on it. Also, 6 of the 10 people who entered this time are dead. They are all heroes. I will award all 6 of them with the Hero of Humanity medal. All of you will be heroes of humanity," Sage Kong said firmly and decisively. Hero of Humanity medal? Greiman and the others were overjoyed. Lin Feng did not think much of it. After all, he had already obtained the Hero of Humanity medal, but Greiman and the others had not. Thinking of the various benefits brought by the Hero of Humanity medal, Greiman, Fu Lin, and Darden all felt that this trip was really worth it. Not only did they obtain 20,000 merit value, they also obtained the Hero of Humanity medal. By the way, you can tell us about what you encountered after entering the ruins, and how you switched off the defense mechanism. Lin Feng already expected the 2 sages to inquire about them, so he explained everything that had happened after coming to the ruins. Apart from the matters of the energy factory absorbing energy and him condensing the combat body, he explained everything in detail to the 2 sages. "You mean, you underwent a second life transition and became a divine realm martial artist?" Sage Kong was a little surprised as he stared intently at Lin Feng. "Yes, I've already undergone 2 life transitions. Otherwise, I wouldn't have been able to kill those 3 demon generals." Lin Feng did not conceal it. Moreover, with Greiman, Fu Lin, and Darden around, he could not conceal it either. A 21-year-old divine realm martial artist. Sage Kong and Sage Yuani looked at each other and saw the shock in each other's eyes. Previously, Lin Feng had broken the genetic lock and become an inhuman expert, even shocking the world with a single feat in the global martial arts competition. However, in reality, the sages did not think much of it. After all, there were many geniuses among humans, such as Greiman, Lu Chun from back then, and so on. But how many of them could really undergo life transitions? There was probably not a single one. Only Dongfang Sheng still had a trace of hope. However, even Dongfang Sheng had only undergone the second life transition and reached the divine realm at the age of 30. Lin Feng was only 21 years old, but he had already become a divine realm martial artist. He was definitely the youngest divine realm martial artist in history. It had to be known that in ancient times, the divine realm martial artists were deities that possessed all kinds of incredible abilities. Moreover, Sage Yuani and Sage Kong both knew that up until now, Lin Feng had only broken the genetic lock for a year. It's incredible that he could undergo another life transition in a year. However, be it Greiman, Fu Lin, or Darden, all of them swore that Lin Feng had indeed become a divine realm martial artist. Lin Feng, you contributed the most to turning off the defense mechanism in the ruins this time. Other than 20,000 merit value, what else do you want? Yuani and I can make the call. Indeed, the greatest contributor to being able to shut down the defensive mechanism of the ruins was Lin Feng. If not for Lin Feng, Greiman and the others would probably have been annihilated this time. Moreover, Lin Feng already had the Hero of Humanity medal. Sage Kong could not just award 2 Hero of Humanity medals to Lin Feng. As for the highest honor of humanity, the Meritorious Service for Humanity, it was still impossible for him to award it to Lin Feng now. After all the recipients of Meritorious Service for Humanity were sages, and needed a contribution comparable to turning the tide and saving almost all of humanity to obtain the Meritorious Service for Humanity medal. Lin Feng's current contributions were still somewhat lacking. Hence, Sage Kong and Sage Yuani also wanted to compensate Lin Feng. They simply asked Lin Feng to make his terms directly. What do I want? Lin Feng thought for a moment. What exactly did he want? If he had not undergone a second life transition yet, he would definitely want as much merit value as possible. There was no such thing as too much merit value when all of it would come in useful. At least it could be used to purchase some energy. But now he already had enough merit value. Moreover, there was still a long time before he could undergo a third transition. Now was not the time to accumulate energy. Then what did he want? After some thought, Lin Feng said hesitantly, Sage Kong, due to the incident in Stone City last time, I was deployed to the South Mountain base by the academic faction, and have to guard it for a full year before I can take a leave. It's been a long time since I visited my family, so I'd just like a leave. A leave? Sage Kong and Sage Yuani looked at each other, not sure whether to be dismayed or amused. Was the prestige of 2 sages only worth applying a leave for Lin Feng? Even the thought of it felt undignified. Sage Kong pondered for a moment before saying, It's only right that you're granted leave. I'll make the decision on Invincible's behalf. You are granted 3 months of leave. Is that enough? Enough. Thank you, Sage. 3 months of leave was extremely precious for Lin Feng. It was assuredly enough. However, to Sage Kong, it was a small matter indeed and insufficient to reward Lin Feng for making such a huge contribution. Hence, Sage Kong continued, since you've already become a divine realm martial artist, it's no longer appropriate for you to guard the South Mountain base. How about this? Since you'd like to reunite with your family, you can be the legate of Central Sea City. The legate of Central Sea City? Lin Feng was stunned. This was simply great news. Although staying at the front line was quite good, how could it compare to being the legate of Central Sea City and being able to accompany his family? Lin Feng, are you willing to be the legate of Central Sea City? Yes, I'm willing. Lin Feng agreed immediately with almost no hesitation at all. This was a great thing. Even many divine realm martial artists could not become legates so easily, let alone be the legate of their hometown. Seeing Lin Feng's excited expression, Sage Kong smiled as well. He continued, You don't have to be so happy so prematurely. Let's make it clear first, you can only serve as legate for 3 years at most. Once the 3 years are up, you must go to the front line. Understood. Lin Feng naturally knew about the new policy for martial artists. Even if he was the legate, he could not hold the position for long. Once the deadline was up, he had to go to the front line. All right, you're all tired. Go back to the base and rest first. Sage Kong waved his hand, allowing Lin Feng and the others to leave the ruins and return to the base. Looking at Lin Feng's departing back, Sage Yuani suddenly said, "The fluctuations from descending star power are incredibly great for a divine realm martial artist. How come we haven't found anything?" With the astuteness of the sages, how could they have not noticed Lin Feng's uniqueness? Lin Feng has secrets. I didn't sense any astral power fluctuations from his body, but his physical body is too strong, even stronger than those demon generals. It's also true that he killed those 3 demon generals. Looks like he obtained an extraordinary legacy. Sage Kong narrowed his eyes slightly and said meaningfully, "You're saying that Lin Feng had obtained the legacy of an ancient civilization before? Perhaps. How can such a genius who rose within such a short period of time not have any fortuitous encounters? Among the 9 sages, which of us never had any fortuitous encounters? Back then, if I hadn't obtained the legacy of an ancient civilization, I wouldn't have been able to undergo 4 life transitions either. Yes, Lin Feng's secret must be kept. I think very highly of him. He even has a better chance than Dongfang Sheng." "You mean the chance of becoming the 10th sage? Elder Kong, you do have high hopes for this little fellow. We might not have much time left. The more power we have, the more hope humanity has." With that, Sage Kong retracted his gaze. This ruin was the most important thing at the moment. Lin Feng returned to the base where Sage Kong and the others were. He bade farewell to Greiman and the others before returning to his room to rest. Lin Feng had completed this mission satisfactorily. Although many people had died, it was not Lin Feng's responsibility. Moreover, they had obtained the Hero of Humanity medal. Their deaths could be considered worthy. Lin Feng had gained a lot from entering the ruins this time. Not only had he undergone a second life transition, he had also cultivated the tidal combat body. Even Lin Feng himself did not know how strong he was. However, what he was even more excited about was that he could go home and become the legate in Central Sea City. Even though the order had not been passed down yet, with Sage Kang's guarantee, the order to be the legate in Central Sea City would definitely come in the next few days. Lin Feng had yet to completely familiarize himself with and adapt to the tidal combat body. He extended his hand. With a thought, his arm expanded rapidly. Now, Lin Feng could already control the tidal combat body to erupt in a certain part of his body. Lin Feng felt a little awkward when the tidal combat body was retracted. Actually, after his genes were restructured, his 200-meter-long body could be considered his true form. As for his present state, it came from forcefully compressing his cells to transform back. To maintain this form, Lin Feng had to suppress his combat body at all times. Fortunately, Lin Feng's mental power was very strong, so he was not afraid of being unable to suppress it. The tidal combat body was good in every aspect, but there was one thing that Lin Feng could not let go of. Once he used the tidal combat body, his entire body would be naked, and every part of his body would become larger. At that time, he would be completely naked. Some things were just too eye-catching. Back in the ruins, Fu Lin's face was flushed because Lin Feng was completely naked at that time. It was too embarrassing. Longbetham, is there a way for me to use my combat body without being naked? Lin Feng was human, after all, and had a sense of morality and shame. It felt too awkward to be naked like that in every battle. According to your human sense of morality, it is indeed somewhat inappropriate to be naked. However, this matter is actually very easy to resolve. Every time the Great Master uses the combat body, we do not see Master naked either. You can already restructure cells and control the cells. Is it that difficult to conjure a layer of armor? Armor? But my innate ability of armor doesn't seem to be working anymore. Why would this require any innate ability? Your combat body is so strong. Is it that difficult for you to rearrange the cells a little? Lin Feng was slightly stunned. That's right. The combat body was so massive, and with his powerful mental power, rearranging a few cells would not affect the combat body at all. However, it could conceal certain parts of his body very well. I see. Having understood, with a thought, a layer of black cuticle scales immediately appeared on his arm. They were densely packed, like a layer of armor, and quickly covered Lin Feng's entire body. The so-called innate abilities are actually some changes in arrangement on the cellular level. All your dire beast genes have integrated into your combat body. You can also control cells. This minor innate ability is nothing. If you can understand the cellular arrangement of certain dire beasts, you can even become a dire beast. Changing forms. Lin Feng was stunned. That's right. He could already control the changes on the cellular level now. If he could understand the cellular arrangement of a wild bovine, he could even control the cells and transform into a wild bovine. Moreover, it would be a real wild bovine. It would be completely different from certain illusions, but one that had changed forms from the inside out and was no different from a real wild bovine. If there was any difference, it would probably be the difference in genes. The ability to transform into anything was an ability of the myths, but could humans really transform into anything? At least, Lin Feng could do what Longbetham had said about transforming into those dire beasts. However, how complicated was the cellular arrangement of those dire beasts? It was already extremely difficult to study just one type of dire beast, let alone memorize its cellular arrangement. Moreover, even if Lin Feng transformed into a wild bovine, what use was it? Apart from being a novelty and spectacle, what else could it do? Longbetham, didn't you say that there are natural planetary lifeforms in the cosmos? If I study the cellular arrangement of planetary lifeforms thoroughly, will I be able to transform into a planetary lifeform? Lin Feng quickly thought of a shortcut in cultivation. He could control cells. Transforming into an ordinary dire beast was definitely not worth it. There were no benefits at all. But what about transforming into those planetary lifeforms? Your idea is very good. Looks like you are not stupid either. You can indeed transform into those planetary lifeforms. However, those planetary lifeforms all have unimaginable amounts of cells. Forget about the number of cells you have now. Even if you undergo another life transition, or 4 or 5 life transitions, you will still be far from comparable to a planetary lifeform. If you do not even have enough cells, how can you transform? Only by becoming a planetary lifeform can you transform into those natural planetary lifeforms. But then, what is the use? The combat body you cultivate is already the form most suitable for you. What would be the point of transforming into other planetary lifeforms? Lin Feng fell silent. On careful thought, this made sense. The combat body was already powerful enough, and it was the most suitable form for him. Transforming into another life form would be meaningless. It seemed like some in the universe had long thought of these wondrous ideas of his, but they were all impractical. Actually, it is not completely impractical. Some natural planetary life forms have certain highly unique abilities that can be very useful under special conditions. However, studying a planetary life form thoroughly is just too difficult, and may be very time-consuming. If you have the time for it, you may as well think about how to further your life transitions. Lin Feng did not know if Longbetham was right. He planned to find some time to study the cellular arrangement of some dire beasts and see how complicated it was. However, with Longbetham's hint, Lin Feng could easily change the arrangement of some cells. His body was quickly covered in a layer of black scales. At least this solved the problem of being naked every time he used his combat body. In fact, the black scales were not too attractive either, and looked similar to dire beasts. Lin Feng continued to study it for a while, before finally changing into a layer of gray armor. It did not look too abrupt. Every time he used his combat body, no matter how massive it was, his body would be covered in such a mighty armor. This armor was actually useless in battle. It was simply an adornment. However, at least when Lin Feng was fighting, he did not have to be as awkward in front of others as before.